Let's do one more Acolyte thing.
Okay.
And we'll move on. So Star Wars The Acolyte comes out next week on Tuesday, which if you're watching this on our Saturday release will be in just a few days.
Mm-hmm.
We will, of course, be watching them and doing an after show the next day. And we'll look at every scene, every piece of dialogue, every theory, everything. We'll talk about it. So I thought it would be kind of cool to take a roundup of maybe some final theories that we have about what's going on. And I've listed out a few. I don't know if you have any generally.
You just go ahead and I'll fill in whatever comes to mind.
Okay. So the first thing is that I've watched all of the trailers and I've watched, I think, all of the TV spots. And it is very clear through the editing of the trailer that we are meant to believe that May, who's played by Amanda Stenberg, is the person who's killing these Jedi, right? And that she's the bad guy. And with Jedi Master Soul being like, let me be the one to bring her in, and that whole thing with her and Carrie-Anne Moss fighting and shit. My first theory here is that despite what the trailers will have you believe, she's not the one killing Jedi, and she's not a bad guy. I think that she's not a Jedi anymore. She probably walked away from the Jedi. But I think that what's most logical to me is that she discovered the plot first and maybe is like getting there to each one right as they're being killed or perhaps right after. Which
makes her look suspicious.
Right. And then, of course, because she doesn't trust the Jedi, she would fuck off. And, so I think we'll find out that she's not the bad guy.
Okay. My sort of counter theory to that.
Okay.
At the end of the season, because we know that this was envisioned as a multi-season thing, I think she's going to be somewhere in the middle, like pulled both ways. In that sort of middle ground temptation spot.
Sure. Temptation makes for a good story beat.
Yeah. Also, I think Carrie-Anne Moss's character is probably going to die.
Well, I'm going to get to that.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't disagree. So the Coven of Witches that she's from, I think also won't be adversarial.
Is she part of the witches?
She was.
Oh, okay.
As a child, from what we can tell from the trailers.
Then the Jedi showed up and said, hey, come with us.
Actually, what they did was Jedi Master Soul walked up to a tiny little child and handed her a lightsaber and said, wouldn't this be cool? Because we all know the Jedi are very responsible.
Hey, watch out. Don't chop your arm off.
This is why Jedi aren't allowed to marry. No, it's because they're
so fucking stupid.
Yeah, they're like, you'll have kids and then they'll die. So I think that we'll find out that this Coven of Witches, I think we'll have deep philosophical differences with the Jedi over this whole, like, the Force is a thing that exists that you don't own or control. And it's unfair for you to go after the people who can access it who aren't Jedi.
To go after our children and say, hey.
Or even us for having a connection with the Force or whatever. So I think that those guys will end up being a little more complex than just baddies, right?
I think we might, if this isn't a outright Dathomiri Coven of Witches, I think
it is not.
See some connection made, just because like this is just on my mind after Ahsoka, how the witches are like actually exist in both galaxies and.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. You're right.
Maybe just witches are a universal constant,
or it's just what they call different sects of people who gather, who can access the Force.
Could be.
I think most of the Jedi we've seen in the trailers will end up dead. I was reading through some of the character descriptions. So like Kelnaka, the Wookiee Jedi, his character description is that he's a Jedi Master who is more or less exiled himself to a forest planet. And he's a loner.
Okay.
We don't know why. It could be some kind of...
That would seem to make him a good murder target.
Right. I think
you're just going around killing Jedi.
I think he might be one of the targets. I think that if they go the direction I think they're going with this bad guy with the red lightsaber, I wouldn't get attached to too many of them.
Counter theory, I think Daphne Keene's character definitely survives
for season 2.
And this is just based on meta knowledge because there are a few things that are like beyond the pale for movies and TV, and killing a child is one of them.
Yeah, unless you're Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I think her character and the Squid Game guy's character probably makes it as well.
Probably.
Yeah. So the big question is, how is this going to jive with the now infamous Ki-Adi-Mundi line from episode 1?
We had talked about before about how it's possible that all the Jedi who found out there were Sith just fucking died.
Yeah, which would be great because then,
it neatly ties everything up.
Dead men tell no tales. Or, and we've talked about this as well, that maybe all of them live, maybe they don't, but they report back to the Jedi what they saw. And they say the same thing that Ki-Adi-Mundi challenged Qui-Gon with.
Yeah, Sith have been extinct for 900 years. There's no way.
They've been extinct for nearly a millennia. You are wrong, which is exactly what they said to Qui-Gon, right? I like this option better because I think it kind of fleshes out the rot.
The hubris.
Yeah, and just how kind of decayed the Jedi have become with their believing that they're invincible.
Yeah, because remember, this is the Jedi at the peak of their power.
Yeah. Couldn't possibly have not sensed the Sith coming back.
Yes, and it's very easy to believe that an incredibly powerful organization like that just doesn't believe they could be threatened by anything.
Yeah. So I like that option better. I think it's there's a lot more depth for the storytelling than just there are no survivors. I would like a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Because I would love to see a bunch of, even though they look really cool.
Maybe episode 8 ends with Lee Jung-jae's character coming back and telling the Jedi, hey, there's Sith.
All of my friends are dead.
All my friends are dead. It was the fucking Sith. Let's get the cavalry and go fuck them up. And Yoda's just like, nah.
No.
You're wrong. No.
He does the consent.
Sith, no here.
Okay, so I think this show is definitely getting into the Sith. Maybe not by name.
I think we talked about this when the title was very first released all those years ago, but Acolyte means something kind of specific in terms of Star Wars.
Yes. And yes. And so we might not get a like, oh my God, it's a Sith, or the guy taking his helmet off me like, I'm the Sith, right? like nothing like that. But I think that there'll be enough inference for us to understand without the characters knowing, or without the right characters knowing, which would be good storytelling.
Maybe a nice little low male choir sequence at some point.
Yeah, a little bit of Palpatine's theme. Yeah, it's like a low E you just went down to.
Yeah.
I don't have perfect pitch. Anyway, so there are expanded universe options for this, and then there is like a new approach, right? So
Darth Bane, because we mentioned it earlier, Darth Bane is explicitly canon now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But he's not going to
they're not going to mention him,
yeah.
But that's an option for the future, I guess.
In this time frame, if we're going with, I think, James Lucino's Plagueis.
I think we did the math.
Right. Well, hold on.
Plagueis would be a young kid at this point.
Yeah. It was James Lucino, right?
I think so.
I might not have that book up.
Palpatine wasn't even alive, so it would be Plagueis and his master.
Right. So Darth Tenebris would be the really obvious, because Plagueis would be like 15.
Yeah.
And
it's maybe a little, so Tenebris we know is a Bith, and they have kind of distinctive shaped heads, which doesn't really look like the masked guy with the red lightsaber. Which isn't to say
they could change his species.
Yeah, Tenebris, like that'd be really easy, because a Bith Sith seems kind of unintimidating at first glance.
That's kind of what I think. I think that's what the appeal is.
Yeah,
you're like, oh my God, should he be playing some jizz? And he's like, no, I'm gonna fucking kill you with a lightsaber. Or it could be an acolyte like an apprentice of Tenebris's that dies.
Yeah, that
maybe the show ends with him finding his other apprentice, Darth Plagueis.
Yeah.
The new approach that they could do, if they necessarily didn't want to dig into the EU very much, they could scrap Tenebris entirely and get a new Sith character. But they would have to keep Darth Plagueis.
Yes,
because he's the one that's mentioned.
He's established canon,
right? So they have to do Darth Darth Plagueis can't, like, he doesn't have to be in Star Wars Acolyte, but he is a part of the story.
Yes.
Right. So
he's part of the connective fiber between the prequels and Acolyte.
Yeah. So they can go either way with that. And then my last prediction here is that I think Star Wars fans will love this. And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be like, yeah, I was probably a little too optimistic, and that's fine.
I think there's a decent chance that this pulls an Andor and is appealing even to people who are not necessarily Star Wars fans.
Maybe bring some more folks in.
Yeah, because like Andor showed, if the writing is really fucking good and the production value is there, you can make a show that appeals to people outside of your traditional fan base.
Yeah.
If the mystery is really good, if the fight scenes are really compelling, I think this has a chance to pull in an audience that wouldn't ordinarily watch Star Wars.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That does rely on word of mouth, which is always a bit of a crapshoot, but
it's already kind of started.
Yeah,
with Acolyte. And the other side of that is that every time you go into the comment section of anything having to do with this, you're going to see a ton of hate. That doesn't mean that a majority of people hate it. It just means that the people who are there, who are likely
who care the most to comment.
Yes.
Or just bots.
I was about to say, likely not even Star Wars fans. We've done a little bit of science on this in the past. A lot of comments like that toward fantasy fandoms are from people who are politically allegiant to one particular side, who are there to bitch about the insert buzzword here, CRT or whatever the fuck, having probably never seen very much of that property, right?
Either that or they have IPs in Russia.
Also probably, because that's the thing they did with The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
So that is entirely possible. Let us know in the comments what your last minute theories and things are.
And predictions, and tell us if you think we're full of shit.
Yeah. Oh, they will. They'll say it in the comments. They'll say something about,
Just
Chris,
show your work.
Yeah.
Cite your sources.
Give me a good logic. Give me a syllogism.
Yeah.
Give me a major and minor premise with a bi-connecting word and a conclusion. You want to get my panties to the ground? Bring some fucking logic to the game.